Hey everybody, we've got a very powerful show tonight, and we'll probably go long. So if we hit 2 hours, we might have a little, a short little break for toileting. And but to start, we're going to start with a song we wrote for the truckies in Ireland. It is called. We don't have a name for it yet, but it goes, "Where do you go when you can't get there from here?" So.
You betrayed the Irish people, we betrayed the sacred land that our forefathers fought. And you can smile, go home with your fucking money.
Boiling in shame by that
fucking should be ashamed of yourself.
They can bring the army all he wants, they're not going to move.
It really affects our economy when we have these type of road closures.
People who are trying to get to work, medical appointments.
Asking a protest are holding Dublin at a standstill for the
get there from here. Where do you go when you know that you can't get there from here? Were a map where each step was an assured prayer that another step with you was waiting. Oh yes, my boy,
violence has broken out against peaceful fuel protesters in Cork. Violence initiated by Garda Síochána, their public order unit, where they can be seen beating and pepper spraying a farmer and dragging him from his tractor.
Now lads, they got the army in to take care of us, to get us out. Not a hope. Convoy blocking the road, they haven't a hope. Not a hope.
Was light, I can see you, my Lord. I can hear you, my Lord. Please keep, oh please keep your lights on. Please keep, oh my
yeah, there's not there for being pepper sprayed here on White Cave. We're fairly heavy-handed, but at least the resistance of the people here was good anyway. They fought well, but a lot of men and women just got to lash the pepper spray into the face. But I tell you what, I water here, my good, thanks.
That's where you go when you know that you can't get there from here. That's where you go when you know that you can't get there from here.
I wish it didn't have the cheering in there, but what can you do? Now, we've been approached by a great friend of mine, Scotty, and he put us in touch with Bronwyn Hendry. Now, she used to work in the prisons, and she's been challenging them in this incredible story. I'm not even going to waste time, because we might as well just bring her on. But prepare yourself for basically someone who's standing up for what is right against a system that doesn't care what is right, as long as it has power. So, hello.
Hi, Michael. Nice to see you. How you going? That was an amazing song. I was like, why don't we do that in Australia? We're like, what is wrong with Australians right now?
I know. We were just saying before the show started that compliance is the thing that's holding us back. I mean, there's been a huge gas explosion in one of our only 2 refineries. I mean, that must be an act of war or sabotage. I mean, come on. We're desperate for petrol. One of our refineries goes down, but it's just violence. So, yeah. So can I, before we start, just tell us what you said in the first bit. What is it about you? You love integrity. You thought everyone had integrity, honesty. that's the place. So you were born with these, what would you say, ideals in you? Do you think you've always had them?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I'd probably, unfortunately say that, I play naivety. I kind of was raised in this household that had really strong morals and ethics and, standards that we lived by. And that was obviously supporting others and being a part of community and living in the country, in the towns that I've lived in and the little town of Donnybrook that I live in. It's, you have to have integrity. You have to have those community minds because, you are somewhat an isolated community. We support each other and there's kind of nothing like it. And I've raised my children the same way. So, yeah, it kind of, I'm nobody, an ordinary person, absolutely, without a doubt, the most ordinary person you'd probably ever meet.
I doubt we're going to think that by the end of this interview.
Yeah, so it's kind of like and I'm quite shy. Like I'm quite a reserved person that doesn't like the limelight, has never really gone to chase conflict, or actually have probably run from it most of my life. Is, I'd rather be happy and resolve conflict than sit in it and hold a grudge. And here we are. So it's kind of one extreme to another.
I'm just going to put that down. That's a question I'll ask at the end. We're going to hear your story. So you've been quiet all your life. What is it about this that made you go, I can't let this one go. I'm like a dog with a bone. But rather than answering it now, let's answer it after because people will understand the context. So let's get to the point. You're working in the prisons. And now, what attracted you to the prisons in the first place? Because it's not something that would attract everybody. So what were you going there for? Just for money, or you like the challenge?
Yeah. So most of, if not all of my career has been in helping the most disadvantaged people in our community. Whether that be, did some work for Department of Child Protection, not as a caseworker or anything like that. That's quite controversial, but in residential care, child mental health, did diplomas in youth mental health, and I was driven to be a bit of a helper, and also I joined the prison. Primarily, I was a single mother of 6 children. Wow. I chose to homeschool those children, and I'd homeschooled them most of their, if not all of their childhood. And the prison, so what's lucrative about working in the prisons is you work 10 days out of 21. And they're 12-hour shifts. So I was balancing my responsibilities as a mum of 6 boys, making sure they could get to their sports, as well as balancing their education, living in a country town where sometimes education in smaller towns doesn't suit what the boys were interested in. So I'm not adverse to mainstream schooling. It's just what worked for my family. And so I decided to work at the prison, and that was where I could do both. I could help, if possible, the most vulnerable people in our community that have been imprisoned for whether or not they deserve to be there or they're not, or they're actually guilty or they're not, they're there. And you can use your skills that you've learned, whether or not it's effective communication or whatever, to help them rehabilitate certain parts of their life. And it worked. It worked really well with the children, where I could schedule my shifts and be there and be a present mum, as well as working full-time.
Were you nervous the first time you went in, or the first few times? Because, you're going into a men's prison. You're an attractive woman. No offense, but these guys are locked up for a long time. There's some of them are dangerous, or you would conceive that they're dangerous. What was that like going in the first time? You must have some real streak of courage in you.
I think you go through the academy first, and they rough you up. Terribly, they rough you up. So you're
in what way?
Or they wrestle with you, they fight with you. You're trained to use weapons such as like pepper spray, chem spray, cuffs. You're trained to have batons, And so then they use that on you when you're training, so to toughen you up. So you kind of that's the stage you go through first, and you do that for 3 months. Wow. And that's where you start to learn complicity. So you start to learn that this is a paramilitary environment, and it is very much authoritarian run. So you don't dare to get off the floor after they've hurt you and say, hey, that wasn't necessary, because already you would have been probably put in a category that they would have then further just targeted you further. So for the first time walking into a prison, obviously,
hey, Robin,
the prison, to be honest with you, the prisoners actually really, mostly the prison that I went to, they're really quite complicit as well. So you've got to remember that they've learnt the way of the land, and they don't look at a woman with, and if they do, if they will whistle or mention something about the way you look, they're very quickly reprimanded. Bunbury Prison is a very unique prison. It houses lifers, which is people that have murdered people, multiple people, and it's a sex offenders prison primarily. So you've got, pedophiles and that are housed there for a long period of time. There are other units in there that, house remand prisoners or prisoners that are, on shorter stints. But primarily most of the work there is sex offenders and murderers in the Bunbury Regional Prison where I entered. So the environment is in itself takes a long time to get used to. The old school keys, you've got big keys that you have to, carry around. You've got the big gates and the big doors that slam shut. So, and then, the smell in itself is extraordinary. It's a smell you'll never get out of your nose. It's a
How would you describe it?
So it's a description between feces and disinfectant.
Wow.
They're not a clean environment, like one of the prisons in Perth, Hakea, they're infested with cockroaches. And obviously the prisoners clean the prisons. You don't have domestic or industrial cleaners come in. So it's a very unique smelling environment. And that's not something that they can some funny stories about, the plumbing, for example, and we call it the waffle. So you'll never see a waffle. You'll never, ever be able to eat a waffle again, potentially after this story. But they, instead of using the toilets, they push their feces down the shower grill, and it's called a waffle. So, the prisoner's poo is often seen in these grills, and by the time you see it, it looks like a waffle. So if you can imagine the smell.
Why do they do that? Do they want to screw up the system, or why do they do it?
Do you know what? You're surrounded with people that are incarcerated for some of the most heinous crimes. They would have issues with playing with their own feces. They bronze up, so they smother themselves in their own feces.
Holy shit.
There's lots of things that go on in prison, and it would primarily come from inaction of not receiving treatment for severe mental health issues or even personality disorders that have been unaddressed. There's no excuse for some of their behaviours, but a lot of it is a trauma response. Pedophiles are usually children that were sexually assaulted as children. So you can imagine that how they handle their own bodily functions is their only control that they have in a place like that. So, sometimes they don't want to use a toilet that everyone's watching them use. So they'll take a dump in the shower and then create a waffle.
So when you were there, though, so what started your journey of where you started having issues? Because, to be honest, I think there's, if most people would think about these prisoners, they'd be going, we don't care what happens to them, to be honest. So what caused you to suddenly what was the issues you had with the system that saw you stand up?
I said primarily I went in there just as having previously professional careers and obviously knowing that there should be a workplace standard in behaviours with other officers. So I walked in there and straight away, not the prisoners, but senior officers nicknamed me Fresh Meat. I met I met the criteria for what they were looking for of these male officers. That I was a single parent, obviously that would reflect vulnerabilities, and that was the questions they ask you on your first day. And yeah, it's kind of started off with that. I got it hit straight away. I was the MILF, the mother that they would like to fuck, and then turned into the MILF when I became a grandparent. And so, that it starts off with making sure your place in a prison, in a male-dominated prison, is that you are just a female with a vagina that everyone wants to get a bit of. And unfortunately, that's how it started. As it progressed, you see then why it's like that. So why there is such an acceptability of behaviour, because complicity comes with turning a blind eye. So most of it is that no one has a standard of care, no one has a standard of behaviour, no one has a standard of respect for anybody that they work with. Or the prisoners. So I guess what I started to see also are prisoners that were imprisoned with severe intellectual disabilities that were being manhandled by prison officers, that were being, I would say it's torture, a lot of the things that they do. And then you've got First Nations prisoners, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
What are the things you're talking about when you say torture? What are some of the things you're talking about?
I can speak from my own experience personally, and that's all I really can do. Is obviously there's been lots of things, but there was one occasion there was a prisoner with a severe intellectual disability, so he didn't really even know that the compliance was standing up for muster, because it's a paramilitary situation. So besides the fact it's kind of so contradictory, as long as you can count the prisoner and you write that on a piece of paper and they are present, they are also subject to authority. So they are told to stand for muster, which is for count, and we go around and do a head count. Now, on this particular night, this particular prisoner didn't quite understand those commands. He was intellectually disabled. He was, medicated very, very greatly. I think, as far as I was aware, he was on depot injections for psychosis and for other things. And he got so upset that he slashed himself up. So when they can't deal with their own emotions and they're locked up for long periods of time, so 24, 48 hours because of staff shortages, they turn on how they get relief, and that is sometimes to self-harm. So if they can feel the pain on their body, they don't feel it in their mind. And this young man, he slashed himself up. I was a first responder, and I was ordered to cuff his wrists over open wounds. And and then other officers were then ordered to put a spit hood over his head and drag him. And so you talk about that. Now, this was just they don't even call that a use of force. That is just a very common situation that goes on there. And these people aren't given support, mental health support or psychology or assistance. And unfortunately, in some cases like this one, that I had to, and you're ordered to do it, and you're not allowed to deny a lawful order. So even if you feel it's unlawful, you have to comply with the order by your supervisor, and they're allowed to complain about it later. So, so when they order you to put handcuffs over open wounds that are bleeding profusely, and this young man is screaming in pain, that is the lay of the land. Now, he was compliant. He wasn't resisting. He wasn't dangerous. And that, that's one example of the things that they do to make sure there's complicity.
And you started cataloging these things, did you?
So yeah, I'm a bit of a learner. I want to get things right. So I diarized everything. So I just had a diary, which included making sure that I was doing the count properly, applying, even, the fact that applying the cuffs properly, releasing them properly, giving the right instructions. So yeah, I documented everything more for my own account, not to bring it forth necessarily, but just to go, okay, well, how does this work? And trying to work out why this happens. And documented in a diary, which was just my diary. I go home and go, okay, well, this is what happened today, and this is what we could do better next time, and make suggestions and try and be really proactive that we need better care for these people. That yes, the courts have decided they need to be in there, but the point of them being in there is rehabilitation and support, so they come back out as some reformed people. But unfortunately, there is none of that in these prisons.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is there any actual reform, or do they just say that to make it look like there is, but there's no interest in reform?
So we see it advertised that there's programs. The sex offenders do their sex offender program about 10 times, but if you were to see a sex offenders program and what the education book looks like, it is a textbook. That's, do you know what? I don't know if everyone learns the same way, but most of them don't. So when you talk about rehabilitation, there is nothing in the foundation of prisons in WA that I know of that is actually proactive. There's lots of other prisons throughout the world. Like I believe that, Netherlands and things like that, they actually have proper programs where they see results. But from my experience, what I saw was primarily, if they can show you a book and that you have to tick that box, then you've done that program, and we'll report to the parole board that you have completed that. And I mean, the sex offenders program, then they go and get into their cells and they'll rape another prisoner. I'm sure they ticked off that box and everyone saw that it was done, but then they'll go find a vulnerable prisoner and go and get self-gratification off that prisoner. So it's obviously not working.
So rape is quite common, like we've always thought, but they never state rape is quite common in the prisons?
Oh, without a doubt. And if it's not, defined as rape, it's so coercive that if they don't comply, then what are the consequences in a prison? So you've got, the same hierarchy that exists in the prison management, it exists in the prison's units.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like survival. They have to survive. So it is, like I said in the book, it's got its own weather. You kind of, it's not a place you can get rehabilitated, that's for sure. They're just a number. They're absolutely just a number, and actually probably less than a number. They are, and because society don't want to hear about our prisons, and they don't want to hear about prisoners locked up, and many of them have been locked up and they haven't actually, some of them are innocent. You've got to talk about, there's people in there that are innocent, that didn't commit crimes that they have been convicted of, and those people, you read their files, you see that, how the hell did that happen? But they're still doing time. And unfortunately, some of those prisoners are kept in the shorter term accommodations, which are, and yet the lifers and the sex offenders get put in what we call the resort style prison, because they're there for a long time and a good time. So they get.
Tell us about the resort. That was really interesting what you were talking today about the Granoff murder. Tell us about the resort.
Yeah, so you've got a section in the prison. There's two sections. There's one called the PRU. That's very well advertised, that prisoners get their own house. It's a very similar setup in the main prison, where prisoners that are there for a very long time, so I'm talking about sex offenders and murderers, and we did touch about the Greenock serial killer today. And so their lives are very different in a prison because they're there for a long time. So they've got tennis courts, beach volleyball courts. They get fillet steak and dentistry, medical. They get whatever they want.
So the Granoff murderer has a dog.
Yeah, so he's a dog handler for a greyhound. It's another contradiction that just blows my mind, is that you've got these organisations that obviously get funding from the government to rehabilitate greyhounds that have been either discarded from racing.
Yeah.
So you see these dogs come in and they're lame. They're bred to race, and then all of a sudden they're disregarded in WA. They haven't banned greyhound racing here yet. And so what they do is that these lovely organisations look great on paper, come and deliver dogs to the prison. And so the prisoners in the lifer units, which are the murderers and the pedophiles, get to have a dog, and they're supposed to rehabilitate those dogs. Now, the rehabilitation only lasts for a certain many hours a day, and then those dogs get locked up in kennels, concrete kennels outside. And it's the most devastating thing to watch, is you see these greyhounds that are so lean because they're bred to be lean, and they shake profusely in these kennels. And you know, we live in Bunbury, so it gets down to minus degrees a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And the media the people don't see that, you know, like the public don't see that. They see these media reports saying it's great that our prisoners are rehabilitating these animals off the track that could have potentially been put down. And, you know, you've got the contradiction and the insanity of a man that has taken the lives of an entire family is given the joy of an unconditional love of a dog. And then
and
you
beach
see
netball
that
and beach volleyball and every dentistry. I mean, at the moment, I'd say most Australians, working class Australians, are terrified of the dentist, not for the pain, but the cost. You know.
Oh, do you know, it's unfathomable. Yeah, and they've got a cell call. Yeah, they've got a cell call button that they're only allowed to use usually in an emergency, and they're so comfortable in there. They use their cell call button as room service. And they keep pressing the button until they get service from a prison officer to provide them with, you know, something for their constipation or something to make them more comfortable, or that their Xbox is not working very well, or their electric blanket
They've got an Xbox.
They've got Xboxes, TVs, laptops. They can do a Bachelor of Education in there. They can do a Bachelor of any type in there. Sorry?
Do they pay for that? Do they have to pay like
No.
our kids get head fees?
No, they actually get paid to be there. They get paid what's called gratuitous wages to be there. So they get, and then every Friday they're allowed to spend. So every Friday it's like Christmas in the prison. You've got prison officers that are gathering their spends list, which is what the money they've spent during the week. And, you know, you can buy a can of Coke in a prison for $1. You can buy a chocolate bar. You know, it's not the same economy as it is out here. And they get grats. And so they spend it on treats and tobacco and all the things that they can then use it for, to obviously gain some hierarchy over vulnerable prisoners that also spend money. And it's interesting.
Wow. So it's, well, I think with most Australians struggling now, that's a bit of a shock to hear. I don't really want to tell the story that you told me about the Greenough guy, to be honest, but it is shocking. So what happened with you? Did you get at some point where you couldn't take this and you decided to start challenging it?
You know, I didn't challenge the environment as stuff. I know that when I had to attend a code red or there was an incident, I did it the way I thought would work best, and that's purely through communication and talking people down. And it's quite funny. I got the nickname as the Hmong Whisperer. So because I was able to communicate with so the people that have intellectual disabilities in the prison officers call them the Hmongs.
The Hmongs.
Yeah, so Mongoloids, like, you know, the once upon a time.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and so therefore, if you then seem to be a communicator or speaking to them and saying, look, you know, de-escalating certain situations with communication instead of your fists and your hands and your weapons, then you get a nickname called the Hmong Whisperer, and you just get identified as that. So my situation is that, you know, when I was witnessing all this happening, is that you physically as one person, you cannot change the culture there. No. And what kind of happened to me is that during all that, and you've got the, you know, occupational violence and all the things that you see as a prison officer, then you've got male officers that are trying to crack on. And I guess that's where mine escalated, is that I reported sexual harassment to my superintendent at the time, and I told her everything. She had a bit of a giggle. She thought, you know, that's just the way it is here. She's female herself, which is kind of so contradictory in that, because her nickname through the prison is the Moose Knuckle. She has two nicknames, the Moose Knuckle and the Gunt. She's not referred to by her name at all. And I didn't even know her name for my first 3 months when I got there because I had no idea. So she was the nuck or the gunt, and I was so confused. But she's a large lady. You can imagine why she got called the moose knuckle. Would that be purely because of the shape of her private parts? And the fact that she knew that, and she was okay with being called those names by her subordinate officers. It was just confusing.
Yeah.
And so, I reported it to her. She told me that I needed to toughen up in a roundabout way.
Was this, were they touching you or it was just verbal?
Yeah, so I was touched as well multiple times. Verbal, name calling, solicitations. So they would give you a handwritten letter, solicitation, sexual solicitations. It was quite dangerous. And then when I reported to my supervisor, she did nothing. She absolutely did nothing. So I then went on holidays. I decided to write what was called a harm reduction strategy. So I thought, oh, you know what, how am I going to deal with this? I'm going to do it the way that potentially the organization may listen, which is create a policy to stop it. I came back and I sent that to the superintendent, just requesting some safety for, female staff and male staff in regards to sexual harassment, bullying, anything that was just so rampant. And I got some emails back from senior officers where that if you report, your life is at risk and that you're a dog. And that's kind of where it deteriorated.
The senior officers said that.
The people that are in the federal court right now wrote emails, stating that if you report, you're a dog and that your life will be at risk, that no one will have your back if you report someone for sexual harassment at all.
Wow, it's interesting to hear this in this era because there's so much.
Crazy.
This likes hearing something from the 60s or the 70s. So, so what did you do then? Did you decide to stay silent or you kept on pushing it?
No, so I then had to kind of work out who I was, kind of then reflects back on it. I wasn't alone. So there was, at the time I was there was 5 other girls that were being harassed. They put reports in, they were being isolated. I think while I was there was 22 cases. It was just extraordinary. So I was the only one that stood up for it because you just get bullied if you report. It's unfathomable.
You're getting bullied by and sexually abused, not by the prisoners, but by the staff.
The prisoners were great. I'd never, ever had a complaint about a prisoner, to be honest with you. I've never been disrespected by a prisoner. I built good rapport with them, as in, a good professional relationship with them, and they knew where they stand. I raised 6 boys, so it was kind of like I wasn't soft, I was direct, but caring, you are their people at the end of the day. And so
do they also know that if they did something to you, the punishment would be huge, so they'd lose privileges? So is that another reason?
Again, it's selective. So it depends on what prisoners. It's kind of there's a thing in the book. I did write a chapter about 2 kinds of prisoners. So you've got the prisoners that are the informants to management. So they're the ones that inform or snitch on the other prisoners, and they're the ones that get the privileges. And then there's the prisoners that don't know the lay of the land, and it just boys that have done kind of driving offences or they've got drug offences and they're just hanging about. So, the prisoners were amazing. Absolutely. They were very complicit because they've got to be. It's just kind of the way it is. And, so I ended up because nothing changed. So after I wrote my harm reduction strategy and I got emails saying that my life would be at risk and that I was a dog.
That's astonishing.
Threats
on your life.
What's astonishing is that I'm in the federal court still fighting this. That's what's astonishing.
I know. That's where we're getting. It's just incredible. So they're really trying to protect it. So what happened after you got that email about threatening your life and calling you a dog? Where did you go from there?
So I went then to WorkSafe and I reported it to WorkSafe, which is the regulatory body. I had exhausted every avenue in the prison in reporting it. And by that time, you're fucked. I'm sorry, but that's the only word, because you've got officers then that send you emails saying, do not bring a bag into work, they'll load it with drugs. Do not drive on the highway, the police are involved, like they are friends with the police, they'll pull you. And so you get all these stories from these officers saying, that's it now, you've got a target and they will come for you. And so I reported to WorkSafe. I then had dead animals left at my door, at my home.
What sort of animals?
So I had a decapitated possum left at the doorstep, and then a puppy within 2 weeks left at the doorstep.
Oh, my Lord.
And we recently got in contact, or she reached out to me actually. So the WorkSafe inspector that actually conducted the inspection of the prison about harassment and all this going on, she also had a skinned kangaroo mounted on her gate during the investigation. Yeah. So this is where they take it from, they take it outside. It's just insanity.
Yeah. And what are they protecting? Just their ability to be themselves, and they don't want any extra rules on them? Or is there other stuff going on in the prison? Like
there's a lot of stuff. I mean, the stats talk for themselves. The prisons are the biggest drug festation there is in WA. I mean, you look at the stats of prisoners becoming addicted to drugs when they weren't addicted when they came in. And drugs are used as compliance in the prison. So you've got, there's a story, and I'm not going to name anybody, but there's a drug dog handler that decided to report that, he was a drug dog handler. His dog was trained to sit on certain prisoners when they had drugs, or there was drugs in the unit. And one day his dog sat, and he was told that he needed to stop because they were interrupting the trafficking of the prisoners, the drugs in the prison. And so he reported it, and then he was targeted, again, bullied, false allegations. And, it's on the record, his report, that they were actually interfering and actually using drugs as a part of the process. And now this has been reported to the CCC. None of this is new. And the CCC just refer it back to the department to investigate.
And to investigate themselves?
Correct.
Okay. So the WorkSafe, did anything happen from the WorkSafe? Was anything happen in your favour?
So they prosecuted the prison criminally.
Wow.
And then they dropped the prosecution.
Oh.
So, and we're yet to find out why. WorkSafe, I've had an FOI with WorkSafe now for 10 months, and they won't respond. So it's funny,
and they're
isn't it?
legally obliged to, aren't they? There's a time limit to when they've got to.
45 days.
Yeah.
45 days, the FOI system in WA, or anywhere really.
Yeah.
And it takes someone that wants to know. I'm still waiting. So 10 months. And that's for all of the organisations. They're all interconnected in this situation. Is that I utilise the FOI system, but they just won't comply. So they just say, we need a time extension for up to 24 months for an FOI. That's crazy. Yeah.
So that must have been quite heartbreaking for you. So what did you do after that? Were you still working at the prison then?
No. So what happened is that I just followed the bouncing ball, really. So I went to negotiate with the prison management and say, look, while you're conducting an investigation, can I be redeployed, somewhere close to my home? And I can do anything, obviously, whether or not it's a supernumerary position, an admin position, just somewhere. Because I wanted to keep working. I wanted to keep supporting my family. I had a mortgage and children.
Yeah.
And they sent me to a metro prison, 2.5 hours from my home, one way. You do a 12-hour.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would have had to be getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I wouldn't get home to the children and probably until 9 or 10 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
And they said that was their reasonable. That was what their reasonable adjustment was while the case was under investigation. And so I said, look, I've got children at home, and I'm not sure how I do a 6-hour round trip from country WA to metro and manage. I was just kind of that, fatigue management and all that stuff. So, so I didn't go to Casuarina prison. I said, look, you know what, we need to review this and see what the other alternatives are. and they put me on leave without pay immediately. And so I was left with no choice but to resign.
Wow. So that they were forcing you to resign, weren't they? Making it as hard as they could for you.
Oh, and they do it to every prison officer. They will make sure, even, you know, legit workers' comp claims where people have been injured or where they've watched, you know, suicides and self-harm, which happens every day. They will make sure they don't give them.
Well, you would expect suicides in the prison with the prisoners. So there's something you're dealing with, but you say it happens with the guards as well?
We recently had a prison officer, multiple prison officers commit suicide. That's correct. Yeah, there was an incident many years ago where a female prison officer at Bunbury was raped by a notorious sex offender for a period of time, and the officers weren't allowed to breach the door to get her to her, and they had to listen. And multiple officers committed suicide over that traumatic event.
Oh my Lord! Why couldn't they go in? What was the reasoning?
Because he was threatening to harm her with cigarette fluids. So in prisons, they're allowed to have cigarette lighters, and they're allowed to have those kind of things you would never expect them to have. And so it's just it's the most dangerous environment for prison officers.
Yeah, of course. I bet.
Because they're allowed to have so many privileges that have just been let go. You know, prison should be either one thing or another. You know, they're kind of confined to structure, but it's not like that. It's more about keeping them happy to keep them quiet.
Oh, I see. So that, I get it. Just so they can stop the trouble. There's when you left, so instead of just walking away and deciding, okay, that was just a nightmare experience, you decided to keep after them. Why did you decide to keep after them? What is it about you that's different from other people?
See, I think my drive was everyone else. So what happened is that the insurer started paying off women and men what we call barley money. So they started offering them somewhere from 20,000 to 100,000 for them to stay silent and be quiet.
Oh, and barley is when you go to Bali, have a holiday, put it behind you.
Yeah, and that's it. You can resign with some barley money, but you need to stay quiet. So you need to sign this gag order and not speak. And I mean, it was tens of prison officers that were subject to this barley money situation where the insurance company were coming in and saying, we're going to offer you this money and you can resign. And they couldn't tell their story. So what happened is that I complained to the Human Rights Commission for sexual harassment. I was going through that process. I was looking for resolution, just an apology actually initially, and some actually tangible evidence that the department was doing something about what was going on in that prison. And
so you wanted to see that something was happening.
Yeah, well, correct. And all these people had lost their jobs and they'd all been silenced. And I refused to sign the silencing order. I refused the money. I just said, I'm not taking your money and I'm not being silenced. And it's very easy to do. I get why prison officers take the money, and that is because they wear them down to the extent where you're fighting a machine. And it's not just this department. You've got the Insurance Commission of WA that is the department as well, that are coming in as well and going, oh, here's some money and get on with your life and stay quiet. Do not speak about it ever again. And then that lasts maybe 3 months with a prison officer, and they are absolutely wrecked after that. They could have done 38 years of service or 15 years of service, and they are wrecked. And so we created a group called The Silenced. And so it started off as a group movement where I was the advocate because I hadn't signed a silencing order. We did a petition to Parliament, and we got 150 signatures requesting an inquiry into the Department of Justice and the prison service. And through the petition, a lot of them couldn't sign because they'd signed these gag orders, but we were advocating for all the people that were affected by it. And it went to Parliament. I took it to Parliament. I went and visited the opposition leader, and we requested an inquiry, triggering that it was a very short time to get a certain amount of signatures. You remember prison officers, that was 150 prison officers from Bunbury alone, and there's only 300 staff there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
it was.
Yeah,
you have
but
to take notice of that.
Again, that was dismissed, ignored. No, so Parliament wouldn't do anything. I mean, I know the opposition leader at the time, he was trying to advocate, but again, you know, like they wouldn't even answer questions at question time in Parliament. You know, they'd take every question on notice, and that question would never get revisited. So you look at the Hansard reports, and there was no accountability to the minister at the time, because he would say, I'll take that on notice, and never did you get an answer.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. We've seen,
so
like,
you're
I've
dealing
gone,
with a level of corruption that is just endemic.
oh, systemic. I couldn't, I mean, and I'm not criticizing the politicians. I think they're a part of the big wheel. You know, I think they go in there thinking it's a certain thing, but then again, they choose to be the enablers of the people, people that want, you know, and they also falsely advertise that we're going to put your voice forward, and we're going to present what is impacting you right now in Parliament, and we're going to advocate for the people, these members that pretend to hear the people. But when you get to Parliament, like, I remember sitting with the opposition leader, of corrections, not the opposition leader in, not Basil Zemplis, but the other one. And they weren't interested in our story. They were very empathetic, and they were very validating. And, you know, we told them, you know, even showed them evidence that even the inspector for WorkSafe had dead animals left on her door. And that this had been reported to WorkSafe. This has been reported to the CCC. And, you know, they're like quite shocked. Pardon?
Were the police interested in the dead animals on the steps?
So this is the other thing, is that during the investigation of WorkSafe, it was found out through many reports from prison officers that the police were involved with the senior management. And so therefore you get these emails from WorkSafe stating, you know, we've got concerns that there is police collusion in this situation.
Yeah.
And you go, oh shit, like, how do you report to police when the WorkSafe inspector is identifying that the police are involved with the security manager at the prison or the superintendent at the prison, and they have personal relationships, and that's why you get pulled over on the highway randomly and you get your car inspected. So
I'm just going to say, most people, can we just add another thing? Yeah, this was really interesting, because I've interviewed a couple of prison guards before, and their beef was that one took it and two didn't. They had to leave. Was that they didn't have the freedom to say no to the jabs, but the prisoners did. And you were saying that the prisoners would be coughing on you and spitting on you and stuff, but you did take one to stay in the job. Is that right?
Well, I did. Yes, I sat for as long as I could, hoping that these mandates would not. I actually couldn't quite believe that they were being brought out, and I had to wait up. I had a mortgage. I had children, and I was
believe me, I'm not judging you. It's just painting the picture.
And it was a little bit hypocritical, because my children are unvaccinated and they have been their whole life. I'm not a vaccinator myself, but I needed a job. So I took the vaccination, the first one, and I had an adverse reaction. So I was admitted into hospital. It was horrendous. Adverse reaction.
What was wrong?
So I had heart issues with the first one, almost immediately.
Have you ever had heart issues before?
On and off, you know, like I have had it wasn't kind of like that. It was so severe that I got put in straight away into the resus section because it wasn't so much. Yeah, so it was an allergic reaction, I would say, more than anything. It was a terrible reaction to it. So anyway, I had my first one done. I recovered from that. And then had to have a second one done. Obviously, I had the same reaction, but there was no choice. I couldn't do anything else.
How insane is that? You've almost died from the first one, and then they still demand you to have the second one.
So what happened in the prison under the Department of Justice, they had a regime. So if you had, say, Pfizer or Moderna, you couldn't change over to the safer, or if there was a safer alternative, because it had a different schedule. So you had, so the safer one that they were saying, I can't remember what, AstraZeneca one, that was had a different schedule. So you had one, and then you had one every 3 months. So with the Moderna and the Pfizer, you had to have it within a certain schedule. Otherwise, you were sacked, or you were put on leave without pay or whatever until you had it done. So I initially went for Moderna, which I was told was, you know, the best option, the safest one. And then when I went over to the prison and I put a request in that I please change to the other version that I may not react to.
Yeah, fair enough.
They said no. that I would be in breach of the schedule and that I had to have my second injection at a certain time, day, place. And the prison officers were leaving during the day. And one of the officers that was also due for his the same day I was, the second one, he said to, the principal officer, I'm going to pop out and I'll come back. And I said the same. I said, I'm going to pop out and I'm going to come back. And they already knew that I'd had an adverse reaction to the first one. And the PO came down and they said, no, you won't be coming back today. And I said, but I can't be home alone. My children aren't home and I know I will react to this. And I need to come back to work. So I've got someone around me when it happens. And she said, no, go get it done. And then, you deal with the consequences after that. So I did and had another reaction, was admitted into hospital again. So, yeah. And then you walk, and it didn't make any difference, the vaccination. COVID went through the prison like wildfire. Like it was so horrendous. So we had all these vaccinations. I got COVID 3 times because I had no PPE.
3 times.
Yeah. So and prisoners were like, we had to do the nasal swabs for the prisoners. And they would cough on you and spit on you. And I mean, all we had were those little masks that were for like dust, not even proper masks. And nothing, we weren't protected at all. So then we would then take it home to our families and then our entire families would get COVID. It was just a terrible situation. The department, and you don't hear that on the news. You didn't hear about, how horrendous it was for officers that were taking COVID home to their families after they'd had these injections, because the prisons weren't, like I said in the book, the department stopped at the prisoner's skin. They didn't have to, and they were not mandated to have the vaccination.
Yeah, that's what the other prisoners guards told me. They had to take it, the prisoners didn't. But how many were taking the injections? Were many taking it, or did they all say no?
I think probably a uptake was 50-50.
Right.
They were they weren't really educated about what could happen as well, and it was kind of like herding sheep into a room, and then the nurses would come in and they would just cycle through these men, and a lot of them had adverse reactions to the injections. More than what they would have if they had COVID. It was quite sad to see them. And then they were locked down for hours, for days. They were locked down under these regimes of, you're contagious right now, so you've got to stay in confinement for 7 days. And
they've got an adverse reaction, so it's not treated. They're just left to deal with it.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
And
because
the question here is, what was the process of isolation when you people coming to the prison? So were they isolated for 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, so if you had COVID, you had to test. You had to do a test every time you walked through the prison gates if you had COVID or not. And if you did, then you had to go home. But at the end of the day...
So if I was a new prisoner going in, was I automatically put into isolation for 2
Correct.
weeks?
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. You were rat tested first. But depending on where you'd come from and if you'd been in an exposure site, you were in isolation. And then they put you in isolation with other prisoners that have got COVID, and it's recirculated air, so you end up getting COVID anyway. There was no isolation because it's just a contradiction. They say they did it, but then they put people together, one next to the other, that's got COVID. That person doesn't have COVID, but will have COVID in a minute.
We shouldn't laugh, but it's just. Can I ask? So you've gone to the Parliament. The Parliament's just as disinterested. Now, most people would have stopped with the gunt, as you call them. Most people would have stopped with that. You kept going to WorkSafe, then you kept going to where you are now, Parliament. And so what was it that made you go, no, I'm not giving up on this, even though they're threatening my life, which it seems like they're doing? What made you keep going? Because it's a rare thing to find someone who's that determined.
I don't know if it's determination. It's kind of like you follow a bouncing ball. So I went through Human Rights Commission, they terminated, and the only place you've got to go after the Human Rights Commission terminate, and you've got to remember the respondents didn't show up to any opportunity to resolve at the Human Rights Commission. So they just didn't show up. So you go, hang on, if I let this go, then they're just going to get away with it and the cycle continues. So you've got 60 days to file to the federal court. And so I filed for sexual discrimination in the Federal Court of Australia. That's the only place you've got to go. And
does that cost you money to do that?
Yes.
And how much does that cost you?
$55.
So it's $55. Okay, because I know the High Court is about $5,000. Okay, so you go in the federal court. Now, how did you go from there?
So I went in as a self-representing litigant, expecting equal access to justice, and how hard could this be, really?
Yeah.
It's a court of law. I have the right to be there. I have a right for it to be spoken in layman terms and logical terms. And
now, did you have a lawyer, or because you got the 6 kids unemployed, you're representing yourself?
I'm representing myself because multiple reasons. I believe potentially the legal fraternity is again a manifestation of enablers, really. The adversarial system, that all they do is build. And my philosophy was, and I was eligible for pro bono and no win, no fee. I had lawyers clawing at this case because there was so much prima facie evidence. Someone's paying for that at the end of the day, and it's not me, it's the taxpayer. And so for me, I'm like, well, do you know what? I've taken this stand, and I'm not going to, get teams of lawyers and barristers paid for by the taxpayer because I've brought this forth and I see it through to the end. And that was for me a moral decision. And watching the barristers, and there's so many of them. There's 16 lawyers and barristers against me at the moment.
16?
Yes. Yeah, they've got teams of them, massive teams of them. And I sit there on the end of the bar table on my own and try and litigate the matter as much as I can. And it's very strict. You've got very high compliance with procedural compliance and the level of writing that you have to get to. And I started off just flapping around and wondering, surely I can get this right. And now, I'm a bit better at it than I was before. But it's gone on for 3 years.
3 years in the courts?
In the federal court, I've been in. Yeah.
So this is another thing they do, is to basically tire you out that you give in. Is that, you think that's
without a doubt? And the tactics are just shocking. So, but behind the scene tactics are horrendous by lawyers and barristers. They ring you and they spam call you on your phone and they tell you that you are unintelligent and they say that you're stupid, and just that in itself, barristers and lawyers calling a self-represented litigant, and I'm so respectful of everybody. Like, I just speak to them like I'm speaking to you, and I try my best, and they've just so tactically perverted. I've never seen something so mean, to be honest with you. And what they do,
because they know they're losing, and so they've got to use other tactics. They can't actually. They know you've got a case.
I think they're employed by the state. If you didn't have a
case, they would have thrown it out already, wouldn't they?
Well, they would have. Yeah, I wouldn't be there. I've got a case. It's very clear that there is a case. I have to argue that case in front of a judge and in the adversarial system. So, I even was during this process and I don't keep things quiet. And I think that was the threat for them, is that I'll stand up in front of the judge and I'll say, that's not fair. You look at the recusal, for example. So I applied to recuse the judge for unfair procedural bias. And also I recused him for what I assume, for being biased towards me. It's very hard as a self-representing litigant because naturally, judges and barristers and lawyers, they are friends of the court. So they're all friends. Yes. And so regardless if you're articulate, regardless if you get your documentation right, they look at you like you're a piece of shit and you should not be there. And you can be respectful, you can be polite, you can be really tolerant, and they still look at you like you're a piece of shit.
Just hear Borough saying it's hard to fight the system in their system. Now, you're correct, Borough. Yeah.
And so, the Chief Justice recently just wrote a massive speech about self-representing litigants in the federal court. And the stereotype is so horrible. How dare she, where she's not standing in front of a situation like mine, for example, and watching barristers and lawyers abuse the process, completely abuse the process. No defenses for 3 years when the federal court rules say 28 days. How does that happen? And then, so you kind of, you just have to follow the bouncing ball. And I'm not shy to bring stuff up in court. Like, I will vent my spleen. I think the West Australian said that I vent my spleen. I do it the most respectful way I can. And I just go, hang on a minute. And you've got barristers falling asleep in front of a judge, snoring in front of the judge, friends of the court, the state,
That's
opposition.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. And you've got the judge looking at him and doing nothing about it. But if I don't stand up in time, or if I don't sit down in time, then they come for you. So, but the barristers, the friends of the court, because when they introduce themselves, they, friend of the court, or, they are officers of the court.
Yeah,
they are. And so it's kind of like, doesn't feel like there is a differentiation of power. It feels like if you're not one of them, then there is no way you're ever going to succeed, at all.
Can
so
I just stop you for then? We had a question come in, and I was going to ask it too, but this is from where is it here? I think it's it's Tad Askew. Hey, Tad, what do your kids think of their mum? I'm not going to say ballsy because there are a lot of brave men. It's not much anymore. I don't think ballsy is a word. We can't say gunty, but basically, in the last few years, I've seen men a lot tougher women than men. So what do they think of their mum?
Do you know what? They're boys, so they're kind of like they're not. I think I've got a son that's a police officer actually, and
my God!
And I think he would rather me just to get back in my little cottage in Donnybrook and make sure that the washing's done.
Go do some crochet and grow your tomatoes.
Yeah, that's right. Get back to knitting, mum. Like, far out. And he's a part of the system, and he says
Does he understand that you're fighting for something though, because one of the reasons we're here now is a complete lack of integrity. We've seen this in the court system. So many people in our movement have gone to the courts, and you can see how biased they are.
I never expected it to be this extreme, the bias. I've never said, I internally am really confused because you expect justice to be justice. And so, the rules say that, the law says that, it's our constitutional right to represent ourselves and to present our cases. We shouldn't have to speak Latin. I mean, the adversarial system has gotten so perverted that it's compounded on itself. And so, and the discretion is unfathomable. And so the power ends up with the people with the power. And people like me, for example, that just stand there and understand the law of why it was created and why it's there and what we're advocating for as people, comes back to the raw truth of why it was initially brought forth.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to. I would explain the federal court to be a stage, right? So I feel it's a performance. And
look, I'm a playwright. When I was in court for the boys, with the boys from Canberra with the truck, Paul and Mike and his brother Michael, I just sat through 10 days of theatre, all theatre.
Yes.
Stand, rise, here, come in, all this. It's all theatre. And
Yes.
And poor Paul didn't. I don't think he understood that. He was like you. He's thinking, well, here's the law, but that's not it at all. It's
not. And the performance is extraordinary. It is. It's so extraordinary. And the things that the barristers and judges, the barristers and lawyers can say, for example, so the judges sits there and they enable these things to be said. And you look at the judge and you think, far out, dude, like that lawyer or that barrister has just said something extraordinarily mean, and you're going to enable that because you want to watch me suffer, or do you like the suffering that you bring forth? And so it's quite sad, especially in the federal court when they're hearing immigration matters and they're hearing human rights matters and fair work matters, and that the power imbalance is even acceptable, if you can know what I mean. It's kind of like my respondents in my case, I've never seen them in federal court in 3 years. I've not seen them. So the people that I'm alleging to be the perpetrators, they're all represented by barristers and lawyers that are funded by the state. The state are funding their defense, but I don't get the funding. Yeah, so you've got to remember that you're better off being a sex offender.
And those barristers could cost anywhere up to $900,000 a day, or those depending on they're on a huge wicket, and we're paying for it, and the country's broke.
And that's one thing I don't think
using all these barristers. So the WA government is using all these barristers, all these lawyers, our money to persecute you. So that does smell like they're trying to protect something, you know?
Well, you know what? There's nothing to protect. I mean, the argument they're going to have is how much it's worth. And when you're a girl just wanting accountability, I am priceless. So
you're wanting fairness.
Yeah. And I want, you know, it's kind of crazy. I can't be bought, if that makes any sense. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right. You have integrity and they don't know what to do with it because they've beaten everyone down into compliance. And this is what we're saying. This is the road to tyranny, because the road to tyranny is paved with compliance. And that's why we're heading there. We don't have enough people like you standing up. I know I've got Dr. William Bay, a few other doctors, and there's a few other common law people that have stuck up their ground, but they're rare. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And they've got to take on a system that is not fair. That is basically, you know, weighed up against you, you know, to make
without
you
it.
quit.
And I get why people get worn out, and I get why people don't do it. It is, you know, I do 12-hour days on this case every day. There is not one day I do not work on this case. And that is because as an applicant, as a victim, as also a self-representer, I've got to run the court book. I've got to make sure that everyone's documents are in order and are presented to the judge how they're meant to be presented. I have to deal with the disadvantage. I don't have like auto accept on my documents on one of the filing system because I'm self-representing. So it takes up to 5 to 7 days for them to accept a document because it gets scrutinized by an officer of the court, while the barristers and the lawyers have got auto accept. So they could file a defective document and no human looks at it. And then it sits on the court file. And I then have to contact the court and say, look, they've filed a defective document. And then the court goes, oh, well, or right, you know, and I have to be the one chasing it up. So you don't just manage your own case, you manage the cases of the lawyers and barristers that have become so familiar with the court that they upload unsigned affidavits, for example, unfileable documents, for example. And there's no recourse because they are friends of the court. While as a self-representing litigant, I'm scrutinized not just for my work, for their work, and I'm responsible for keeping it all together and to present it in front of the judge.
God, this is a movie. You know that. This is a movie. I mean, there's even the threat, you know, that there's even the threat of, I could see you walking out of some building at night and there's someone following you or to try frighten you. I mean, basically, this is the system determined to protect its own corruption, doesn't care about integrity, doesn't care about what's right and wrong, just wants to protect its trough. And you are endangering that simply because you want justice.
Correct. You know, a part of changing a system is owning it, right? So owning it, going, you know what, we fucked up and we're going to do so much to change it, and we're going to and if you've got staff, then you don't have prisoner suicides. If you've got staff, then you don't have overcrowding. If you've got staff, you don't have self-harm, because you are actually executing what the prison system is designed to do. But instead, they don't do that. So they don't protect staff. It is all a massive unregulated machine because, you know, it's just taxpayers' money and no one really cares where it's going, of how much it costs per person. I mean, what is it, 120,000 to house one prisoner now in WA?
Is that the price for a year?
For a year, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, I mean, looking at from a reality point of view, the politicians know that the vast majority of people here don't care about the prisoners. Like I said, pedophiles, sexual offenders, murderers or multiple murderers. There's very few people going to shed a tear for them. In fact, they're probably finding out they've got a dog. It'll probably piss them off more than this. So you've got that. But the guards themselves, you would think, well, these are employees of the government, and these aren't prisoners, that they should have protections because they're doing a job that most of us don't want to do, and they're doing a job, like you said, that other girl got raped repeatedly and almost killed. You would think that they would lean towards how can we make your job safe. But here it's like if you get injured, they don't care. Just get rid of them, silence them up, just get some other puncher in.
That's
you know?
correct. It's like it's a meat market, and I think what society probably have to look at in prisons is that we complain about crime and reoffenders, for example. So judges letting reoffenders out and they reoffend again. If there was a good system put in place with good officers and regulations, then there would be less crime, obviously. And that's purely simply, there's a funny story that there was a murderer. An old fella, he was in his late 60s, almost 70s, down in the country here, and he showed up to Bunbury Regional Prison on the intake. He'd murdered a young man, and he couldn't afford, he talked about it was the best decision he ever made in his life because he had a warm bed, 3 meals a day, and he got 2 hip replacements for free by the government. The
So
conditions.
he murdered the young man to basically earn a retirement.
That's what he said. That was his holy shit. Whether or not he decided that once he got there, when he saw what it was like in there, because they're some in those parts of the prison, you're better off doing that than going to an old people's home or being put into a nursing home, because you do get your electric blankets, you get 12 hours rec a day, you get
electric blankets.
Yes, electric blankets. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so you get more than the basic. I mean, you get your own kitchen and you can cook fillet steak. I mean, you should see the steak and the food that they waste is insane.
You get your own kitchen.
So the murderer pedophile unit, they've got their own kitchens. They've got kind of an unlimited supply of food. They get fillet steak.
So they don't eat at times like we see on the movies where they're all sitting on tables. They can cook and eat at their own time.
That's correct, yes. And they have house cooks and they have house cleaners and
they have house cooks, even though they can cook their own food.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So they, I mean, I don't understand. First of all, there's no body-worn cameras in these prisons for a very good reason. I can tell you that now. Because if one of those ever came out, you would see the privileges that people get in these prisons, and it's not rehabilitation. That is not rehabilitation. They don't, because that is completely traverse to what it's like in the big wide world outside. You can't. I haven't bought fillet steak or steak, I reckon, for at least 7 years. But they're having steak every day. They whatever they want to eat, they order it and they get it. It's quite insanity, actually. The contradiction is extraordinary, and I can't really be insensitive to the victims' families. I'd love to sit there.
People in nursing homes who pay taxes all their lives, and I used to work in them. For dinner they get party pies and maybe a sprig of parsley. I used to see that. I've written about that. You know what I mean? And
well,
so they get
the biggest thing. You've got child rapists that are getting all those privileges times 10 because they're a protected prisoner, so they don't have to work. They get to hang out and play tennis and beach volleyball, and they get each other. They've got each other to have sexual fantasies with because they're, that's what they've done. And so it's such a contradiction, and that in itself is a whole story in itself. The stories of these prisoners and what they've done, and most of them have been publicly announced, a lot of them in the media, and how they house them. They have intimate relations. It's like maths. It's like maths at in the sex offenders unit. They're all having relationships and having fun with each other. So there's no rehabilitation, or there's no, way of lowering a sex drive of a sex offender, because he's just actually making it 10 times better for himself in that situation.
Who makes these rules? Kelly asks.
I think they're rules that were around probably 100 years ago at Fremantle Prison, and nothing's ever changed. So it's a system and an institution where reform has not caught up with it, where education has not caught up. They haven't looked worldwide and looked what works and what doesn't work, because our government just hands out excessive amounts of money, and it's all about containment until the shit hit the fan, really. That's it.
So we've got like there's a street in Rockingham now that we're trying to get down there, where there's all these homeless people.
Yeah.
Most of them probably hardworking, and this is where they've ended up. And yet child rapists are having fillet steak when they want, playing tennis all day.
Correct. That is absolutely correct. I can't. There's no. You speak to any prison officer at Bunbury Regional Prison that works in the resort prison, and they are eating fillet steak every day. Yes.
Question here, just this one here. Sorry, Kel. Just let me do this one, babe. A neighbour had to wait 2 years for a hip replacement. That's quite common now, but the prisoners get it straight away.
Correct. Yes. They get medical straight away because obviously there's a duty of care on the state government when they're in their care to have them treated medically. Dentist, optometry. So you're talking about glasses and, you know, all the incidental things that we walk. I mean, I've got servo glasses. You know, like it would blow your mind.
Wow.
It's kind of like, yeah, so they get all those privileges and obviously because they are in the care of the state and the state then have to keep them well and happy and preserved. And now I'm not saying that's in every prison. You know, some of them are the most horrendous environments. You know, Hakea is a remand prison and it's cockroach infested and overcrowded and it's full of people that are just waiting, being sentenced or have done, you know, petty crime. I'm talking about
another question here. This is it? Would they get? Could they order in? Could they get Hungry Jack's and McDonald's?
So occasionally they get Domino's, which has pizzas delivered, and they'll do that sometimes. And they did that through COVID. So they got KFC, pizzas, all that kind of stuff they did through COVID.
Borrow's going to prison.
Yeah. I always thought, you know, like if I get done for contempt of court, it'll be the biggest holiday that I've ever had.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. You know? And you'd see the wastage of food. I'm talking about tens of tons of food where they're so full of all this. It's kind of like unbelievable the amount of food that they get. And obviously they work out in the gym. So there's like gymnasiums with full of the equipment, with all the bikes and treadmills and all that kind of stuff. And then the amount of stuff that they just throw in the bin. So beautiful food, veggies and meats and eggs. So eggs, probably, you know, up to 40 eggs per day per house. Milk, for example, they get milk every day, fresh bread every day. And it all just gets thrown in the bin when they can't eat it. And we're out here in a cost of living crisis, wondering how we're going to pay our power bill.
Yeah. Wow. There's, I think Joanne says here, I only eat Scotch fillet. It's wow. Yeah. Wow. Now, so here you are in the federal court 3 years.
Yes.
And you're treated like shit. How dare you? How dare you challenge the system? Just take your hush money and fuck off. Basically, that's what they're saying.
That's what they want.
And so here you are, and so you've got to hear. Now, I've heard that you've also put a thing in with the United Nations, or is that right?
So there's two things going at the moment with the UN. So we've got UN anti-slave labour, which I'm working directly with the Sydney University in proposing submissions to the UN Special Rapporteur that's attending WA later in the year. And that is about slave labour. So that was raised when the superintendent was commissioning Aboriginal prisoners and prisoners alike to create things for her to improve her home. So she was using her power and authority to get prisoners to personally build, like, for example, elaborate bespoke metal gates, and increasing the value of her home and then selling them on Facebook. So her husband then began selling prisoner property on Facebook. So they would commission the prisoners to make this property. Then they would go and sell the sculptures for $1,000 on Facebook. And so that then got transferred to, you know, that was just alarming. So you see these First Nations people and they're putting a lot of work and art and culture into their production in the prison. And it's not there for a superintendent to commission the work and then sell it on Facebook or to actually add value to her own house, for example. Now, the materials are owned by the government. So that is materials that are owned by you and I as taxpayers being used to improve the house of the management there. And so that was raised. It was raised on the news. I think the Channel 9 reported on it and named her husband. Nothing happened. They continued their wonderful process. And so I saw it as a perspective as in they're using prisoners, using coercive control and their power in the authoritative system to actually gain benefit from slave labour. And so they've been asked to write a submission to the UN Special Rapporteur. He's going to visit. This is the first time I think they've seen evidence, actually prima facie evidence of this happening in these prisons in Australia. Because obviously they deal with the UN and it's all done by bureaucrats.
I'm the same, Joanne. It sounds like the Shawshank Redemption, because that's what they're using. So I was thinking the same, Joanna. Yeah, exactly. Keep going. It's it. So you got.
Yeah, so that, so that was one aspect that's going now concurrently. I'm in the process of working with Sydney University, the anti-slave labour organisation, and writing submissions to present to the UN Special Rapporteur. Because in Australia we are expected to comply with slave labour law, and in our prisons, obviously prisoners are being used for the benefit of people in charge, and that is a real problem because it creates such problems for the prisoners, because the prisoners then get bullied and they get isolated, and then obviously people like a superintendent who is paid by the taxpayer is obviously making extra money on the side from prisoners that she's commissioning to make things for her. So that's all going ahead. They've got my submissions and hopefully we'll refine those down. It's very technical. It's very hard.
Yeah.
And then the second one we've got with the ICCPR. So I did a petition.
Who is the IC? Well, that acronym? What does that stand for?
So it's the, oh gosh, you got me on the spot here. I don't even remember what the abbreviation is. So it's
International something court.
International. Yeah, so it's about equal access to justice. So everyone has the right to access a court and be heard. So it's kind of the overarching international body. So it's a Geneva Convention. That's how it arose. And I raised that I wasn't getting equal access to justice. So what was happening is that I was filing documents. They were being withheld from the court file. They were being looked over by a human. And I'm not a cynic at all, but I'd be like, so how come that wasn't accepted? Did it contain something that you didn't want to be seen on the court file? And you'd sit there and wait for many, many weeks. And so it really kind of interrupted my access to justice because I had deadlines I had to meet. I had, things I had to progress through. And then the other state barristers and solicitors were just filing whenever they wanted defective documents.
The automatic ones. So they were actually saying no to some of your documents. They've got a right to say that. I mean, surely in your defense, don't you have a right to put anything forward?
You have the right to put anything forward. That's correct. So what they would do is they'd stop it at registry and they'd reject it. And you wouldn't even really get an explanation, or they'd say, oh, it's with Chambers, which is with the judge. We'll let you know what he thinks of it, or you'll deal with it at the next hearing. Some of them never made it to the court file, ever made it to the court file. And and you weren't given a reason why they didn't make it to the court file. Besides, you work on these documents that, up to 180 pages long, some of these documents, and you don't know.
Crap, really?
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah. And you don't know where they've gone. And so I'm a bit of a voicer. So I'll be like, where's my document? Why hasn't it been filed? And it probably took about 2 years I rang the New South Wales registry. Funny story, because I was asking Perth, what's going on? These documents that the other parties are filing are going through in seconds, because I collated an Excel spreadsheet saying, okay, they're getting theirs accepted in 2 seconds. Mine's taking days, if not weeks, months. Yeah. And I rang New South Wales registry because no one would give me a straight answer, not even the judge. And I said, what is going on with these barristers and lawyers, and how come they are so much favourable over me? And this girl was honest, and she said, they've got auto accept and you don't, and you're not allowed to have it because you're self-representing. And I was like, that is so unfair. And she said, yes, it is, but you're the first person to raise it. And I was like,
wow.
Well, I'm going to raise it with the UN. So I raised a petition to the UN for unfair, unequal access to justice for self-representing litigants in the entire Federal Court of Australia. So it's everyone, 25% of them.
Wow. You make elbows pay.
And then, so that then got pushed back, and they said, first of all, you've got to try and remedy it with the courts. You've got to try and remedy it with Human Rights Commission. And so I'm in that process now. So I'm now dealing with the President's delegate of the Human Rights Commission on how the federal.
And how are they taking you more seriously now because they know the United Nations is waiting?
I think they to be honest with you, Michael, I think they hate me. I think I would have to
I
be.
have no doubt that they hate you. I think you should actually say on air that you're not suicidal. To be honest, I hate to
Correct.
say it. Our system
Yeah.
is so bad, but yeah, I don't have any idea. But are they, even though they hate you, are they now playing ball more because you've actually got the stick of the United Nations behind you?
Some organisations are, like the Human Rights Commission, yes. So they know now that they have to remedy it locally, or at least hold the federal court accountable with a very good reason about why they do this. And it can't be just because, the average self-representing litigant is a pain in the court's ass. They're not allowed to respond like that. They have to have a good reason why we can't get access to justice like lawyers and barristers can. So we're yet to find out what the local remedy is. If it's not, then it progresses back through to the UN, and we go through that process, which is very hard again. These are very highly legal technical documents.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and now the other thing, have they offered you any more money? Has there been any offers of money to make you go away, apart from the barley money?
Yeah, I can't really talk about what they've offered and what I've declined, because that is, something that I have to keep confidential to the court. But I have declined, and I've declined more than anything financial. I've declined the gag order, and there's, the fact that they, that was there's no compromise on a gag order for them. So I'll just keep going until we go to a full trial and it's heard by the public, and hopefully the judge is not, influenced by them, or that he can see me for me. I don't know how the judge will handle it. We've got a new judge now, so we've got the Brittany Higgins judge, Justice Michael Lee.
Wow,
he's in Sydney, so I've been appointed. Probably one of the most renowned judges in Australia to hear this case.
And is he coming over, or he's going to hear it online?
So no, he'll most of the case management hearings he'll hear online, and then he'll come over for the trial, which is scheduled so far in September. But
have you had any dealings with him yet?
No, not allowed to speak to him in chambers. You're not allowed to speak to him directly at all. So I haven't dealt with him yet. He's got some really strict procedural guidelines where you can't speak with him or his chambers. You have to do it through the registry. So, and that's a great way to be. I'm hoping that I'm just hoping it's fair at the end of the day. And
that's all you're after, isn't it? All you're after is fairness.
Yeah, I own my shit.
Anthem. Australians all let us rejoice, but we, and we're supposed to be advance Australia fair, and this isn't. This is just.
That's not what I've experienced so far. The environment itself is completely mind blowing. That's why the book is called Scars in the Marble. So the marble is the federal courts. It is the environment you walk into, and the scars are deep. They are well and truly entrenched in the legal fraternity and how they manage cases. And from the positive side of it, I've got all these people in the background that just kind of contact me constantly now, and whether or not they were victims of sexual assault or rape or whatever, and they experienced the same in the courts, where barristers and lawyers were saying that they asked for it. That there were
that's
horrific,
a common thing, isn't it?
And the fact that a judge will, and that is allowed in a court, that you can actually re-traumatize a victim that has been prima facie raped just because a defense barrister wants to get a lesser sentence for their client. So therefore they're going to say that girl asked for that to happen, or she was wearing provocative clothing, or that, she wanted it. You get all those victims now saying, this system is absolutely broken. And it is. And I know that I'm going to be put on the stand, and I'll probably be called, whatever they want to call me. My whole life gets brought out in this case. They don't stop at what happened to me at the prison. They'll go back to whatever, if there is anything.
Just try to discredit you.
It's all about credit now. It's all about discrediting. So, and it kind of, like, I make mistakes. Like I'm just a human. Like I said, an ordinary girl.
Of course.
And you say one thing one way, and they pick apart your words, and you think, what the fuck? You just kind of, you're honest. So it's kind of like, it's gaslighting. It's very manipulative. And I think at the end of the day, surviving that is going to be my biggest challenge, because I do have a deep-seated moral and ethic expectation on myself. So when someone then just goes and says something that's extraordinarily not true, or tries to convince a judge of that, like you see in sex offenders cases, and you see, it's really hard to disassociate and keep it together, because it's actually really it's torture. I call it the punishment in the process. It is absolutely torture.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that for the last 6 years. It's because our first time most of us are involved. We're seeing with APRA treating doctors.
Absolutely.
We're seeing it everywhere. Yeah, we're seeing it everywhere. It's just it's an incredible time like this, because what we're losing, and they probably don't care, but what they're losing is our identity as a country, because we thought we were better than this. Instead, you're making it sound like we're sort of a court in the developing world, where it's almost like dodgy here, go, and it's
unfortunately, due to the Commonwealth, we're adversarial system. So I don't know. Yeah, so it's kind of like compounding judgments against judgments, and then regardless if you've got a judge that's actually been he's had his status removed, and he's an absolute retard, and he's got known to be like perverted, his judgment still stands on the record, and people still quote that judgment. And you're like, what the fuck? You kind of blows your mind that, why can't we just keep with the rule of law and not like look into interpretation? This is what it says, and this is black and white what it says. We shouldn't be in a world of, but this judge 150 years ago said this, and then this judge yesterday said this, and let's try and work out what the definition is. I mean, it's just mind blowing. And it's funny, I had a meeting with a registrar and in the court, and what they do is they put you in these private meetings, so they're confidential meeting. And you're not allowed to tell anybody. No, I have a problem keeping my mouth shut, obviously, and I don't really mind to tell anybody. But I got taken in there because I'm noisy, and she said, "You need to know the federal court is a game. You need to understand that." And she's a registrar of the court, paid by the taxpayer.
The federal court is what, the same?
It's a game. It's a game.
Oh, it's a game. Yep.
And she said that. She said, "This is a game. Do you understand that?" And I was like, "No, I'm here seeking justice. This is what the law says." And she was like, "It's a game, and you have no clout." So she said, "I've got no clout, and this is a game." And that stuck with me for many years, going, do you know what? It shouldn't be a game. And I know I don't have clout, but I have my own integrity, and I have my story, and that's it. So I'm.
How do you keep going? How do you keep your spirits up? There must be times where you go, what am I doing? But what keeps you going?
Do you know what? I think family. I have such an amazing children. It's insane. I'm very lucky with them. And also you have to look at it like this is, I don't know what keeps me going, to be honest with you, Michael. Like, it's kind of like a Groundhog Day. I wake up and and also it's kind of self-proof. Like, I can get through this, if I can get through tomorrow, I can get through today. So you kind of one day at a time. And I have some dark days for sure. I will bed rot.
I bet you do.
And doom scroll.
Do you think that they're trying to, another thing you're doing is, I don't like bullies. You don't like bullies. And everyone is trying to bully you into will you just shut up and go away?
Correct.
And you know you're right. And they don't care about wrong or right. They just want you to go away.
Yeah, so they want me to go away. And I think what I've had to do is...
the justice system, which most of us who do have some integrity or maybe a little naive ideals would think that justice, fairness is, but instead it's just, how do we get her out of here? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And do you know what? Like, that you live in fear constantly. I mean, there's cars that go past and take photos of my house, and
really talk about this. So the intimidation goes outside of the court then, because I know they put dead animals on your doorstep and stuff. But what else do you put up with?
So we have cars that drive past and just take photos of the house. We've had one particular that sit across the driveway, all blacked out, take photos of the house. Some extraordinary. I'm not the only one, so it has happened to others.
Do your sons go out to say hello to them?
So our whole house is now cameraed. We have got every camera in every corner of this house, and we've got a dog who has been trained to be let go on people, and he has gone on one. So he's been let go. There was a car that was parked across the driveway, all blacked out windows, and the boys, we're scared. Obviously, the boys are scared. I'm scared. You've got things that have been happening for many years, like dead animals. Even, I mean, when the WorkSafe inspector rang me and she said that I've also had dead animals, and she's very scared for her life because she holds, like I think 35 witness statements with her right now. She holds that, and she would be a great person to knock off or to get rid of, because she comes to the court as my witness, as someone that has interviewed 35 people that have been subject to the same or have got a collaborating story. She is very, very scared, and everyone is. The witnesses are so scared. You've got to remember, these barristers and lawyers cold call these witnesses. So they get their prior employment records from the state. So they haven't been prison officers for 5 years, say, and they get their prior employment records and they cold call my witnesses, cold call them. And obviously I raise that in court.
Are they allowed to do that? Are they allowed to contact your witness?
I think accessing people's employment records, that is when they're not an employee anymore.
Well, look at that woman who accessed Dan Andrews' medical file in hospital. Just looked at it, she's sacked.
Well, this is but we're talking about Minter Ellison's, the biggest law firm in Australia, that are cold calling witnesses and upsetting them tremendously. So I raised this in court. I raised it. I said, they're upsetting witnesses. That's terrible, their contact and interference with witnesses. And there's no possession in a witness. Apparently there's no possession in a witness.
What does that mean?
That means that they don't care. They don't care. The judge doesn't care.
So legally, they're allowed to do it.
They're legally, under the definition of there's no possession in a witness, which means that regardless of who those people are, they're allowed to do whatever they like in litigation, and whether or not that is upsetting them or deterring them. So the biggest thing that's just happened is that they've engaged in actively deterring witnesses to give statement on my behalf. And that's what we've recently just added another case towards the file of what's called victimization, where they're now turning to witnesses that could substantiate my story, and they're actively discouraging their engagement in the process.
Wow.
So it's huge.
So they realize they can't break you, so they're going to see if they can break everyone else.
Correct. So they go to everyone. So they take out, because it's a civil matter. So, you've got to kind of prove it with other people's, how they witnessed it, for example. Same with the criminal matter, how they witnessed it. But, so they will categorically go through witnesses. It's very, very sad. And obviously the witnesses are then, they lose their jobs. They quit or they resign because they've been targeted, that they were associated with this case, or that they were associated with me. And, it's very, very sad that they've gone to that extreme where they've had to interfere with witnesses. Yeah. So that's now gone. That's now gone. Yeah. So that's gone before the judge, this new judge, and I'm hoping that he will actually do something about the interference of witnesses, because that's been going on for many years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Rodriguez says what they're doing is vexatious.
It is.
So, see, I don't know the courts at all. I've hardly ever went one for a protesting. Fine for protesting. That's about it. So there's, how do you deal with the fear? I mean, if they're really, does it make you want to back down, or does every time they frighten you, inside of you goes, I'm more determined than ever?
I think what you do over a period of time of extended fear is that your body naturally, then you become obviously so I check everything. So we don't go out the front door until I've checked first. What's out there or who's out there. The dog comes out every day, and there's no way no one goes out the front no one goes outside at night. We have, I think what I had to do is because I have to then obviously comfort myself. So I have to go to bed with white noise and make sure that, because every noise you wake up to, every noise you hear and wake up to, it's quite torturous. And so you have to find remedy just to survive. And so I've got a routine. The dog is obviously in the lounge room. He will protect us. And then white noise and distractions so you can get some sleep rather than, being scared all the time. Yeah. I think what I had to do, and I probably turned a corner about 6 months ago, where I went, I've had a good life, and I have raised beautiful.
So you fatalistically decide if I die, I die.
Yeah, you have to, because otherwise it's so torturous living in fear,
Yeah.
and it takes over
Yeah,
your
that's right,
life.
Jason. You now are living in the prison.
Correct. Yes, I'm absolutely in prison,
Good
without a
comment,
doubt,
Jason.
imprisoned. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
not. There's no other way to describe it. Is that yes, I am in prison, and that is because they have physically, and everyone thinks, oh, but we've got other people that they've done the same thing to. Coincidentally enough, we've got a WorkSafe inspector that exposed so much of what the prison were doing, and she also had the same deterrence on her doorstep.
So the people coming around to intimidate you at night or in these cars, well, it stands to reason. I'm not saying it is, but allegedly it stands to reason that they're on the government payroll.
Absolutely, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you've got
civil
government
servants
cars.
who are paid to intimidate anyone who threatens the status quo.
I mean, they're government cars. They got blue plates on them. We take photographs of their plates. They're all on camera. So
government cars. So there you go. They're the government employees.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like potentially I'm under surveillance for whatever reason. Whether or not they're allowed to put me under surveillance, I don't really know. Yeah.
and you're being treated worse than the serial killers and the sex offenders who are eating fillet steak and playing beach volleyball.
And all I did was made a report that someone was sexually harassing me, and I wanted to stay at work. So I wanted to keep working. I didn't want to resign. I wanted to keep working, get it all sorted. I was proactive about trying to implement new policy and some reporting guidelines. And I never wanted to leave the workplace. And I wanted to do better for prisoners and, try and make a change. And you end up here. And then you end up in litigation with the state, which is just unlimited amounts of money of barristers and lawyers and whoever they can get.
If you lose, are they expecting you to pay for all these barristers yourself?
Correct, yeah. So if I lose, and this is why people don't do it, if I lose, I'll have costs awarded against me, which would be in the millions.
In the millions. But if you win, then instead of just listening to your case, dealing with your case, which might have cost $100,000 or something, if you win, then the state is going to have spent millions and millions and millions of taxpayers' money just trying to win something they could have cleaned up easily.
They've already spent millions, and they haven't even filed a defense yet. So they've already spent millions. I think we've had.
They haven't even filed a defense.
No, that's correct. They were due to file a defense. They were due to file a defense 2 weeks ago. They requested extension. That was due today. They still haven't filed a defense. So they just abuse the process.
That's a good sign, because it means they don't really have one. So this is what happened to William Bay. William Bay, we're following that case. Everyone thought he was going to lose. In the end, he was up against 2 major barristers. One was the best barrister in Australia in his particular field, and 10 lawyers, or 10 or 11 lawyers. And he beat them all. Eventually, the judge, I don't know if he took pity, but maybe the judge actually went to doing what a judge is supposed to do and be impartial, but he won. And but the arrogance of the barristers and lawyers, William told me, and the people had seen the case, was off the scale. Just off the scale. Yeah.
It's like they're kind of, I don't know, like I don't understand how they become those people, really, or how they lay straight in bed. I've got no idea, because I would say some of those barristers and lawyers are worse than the people I've seen in Bunbury Prison that are incarcerated for life. I would say that their tactics and the way that they do things is just so harming to people.
They're lawyers. That's that joke, isn't it? What you get if you lay 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good base.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a shame the stigma goes with them, because, like, not all of them are like that, but they have to be like that because that's what the system demands. So you've got the adversarial system. You've got a judge that wants to hear that. So if there was a judge that said, no, we're going to hear it for the face of it and what it looks like and what she has said, we're not going to argue submissions and case precedent, and we're not going to talk for hours about what a judge said 100 years ago. We're going to look at what she's provided. We're going to look at the law. And did it happen? Yes. What is going to happen now? It's not like that. And I can't, the perversion is, but this is the system we have. And all I can do is keep going. And, I could lose.
Well, the whole system of Australia is broken, isn't it? The whole system.
Do you know what?
We got cost of living. We should be
Yes.
rich. We've got no oil. We're standing on oceans of oil just beneath the surface of the country. There's all this oil underneath our feet, and here we are, broke, paying huge amount. The whole system is completely broken. I think it's broken beyond repair. I think
I
it's
think
I
I think we're
we
probably
need
the
to,
worst place
yeah,
we've
and
ever been.
they can't change it because they're all so invested. Here's these politicians. That politician was she flew to New York to have dinner with a friend or something like that on our money. You know what I mean? We really got to a stage now. It's like Animal Farm, and these are the pigs.
Yeah.
And in fairness, this is just where we are.
But I think
Yeah.
that's what the purpose is. It is to divide and conquer. So if they can, silo people out, and if they can cause suffering where people can't connect with each other, and they break up groups of people coming together or movements coming together, then I think the biggest thing is that they divide and conquer. So, and they do it so well with cost of living crisis, where people, we're told not to drive anywhere, so we're told not to do anything.
Yeah.
But
Don't wear roof racks.
pump your tires up. I think for my situation, I look at these politicians and they're really just puppets for lawyers and barristers. They don't make decisions without a legal firm behind them.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think a lot of the time we sit there and we say, like Albo is a retard. He is, but his advisors are just as bad. Like the treasurer, he's not an accountant.
I met Albo. I was at a union meeting in Canberra, and all the Labor big guys came down to eat this great food, and he came up and did a speech. I was really impressed by him, to be honest.
Yeah,
he spoke like I've never heard him speak before or since. Now he sounds like an idiot often now when he's doing or out of touch, but he was actually really good in this speech. And so to me now, well, obviously that's who he is because he was in opposition then, and now he's in power. That the things are an act, and the sad thing is no one's buying it. No one's buying it. What they want is they want authenticity. Just come out and say, "Hey, look, we're fucked. We've got to dig our way out of this," But they're not doing it. But it's extraordinary. Can I ask you, what would you see as victory for you? What is, unless you don't want to tell the court, but what is somewhere you'll reach and go, okay, this is what I wanted?
To be honest with Michael, I haven't given myself any opportunity to know what victory looks like, and that is purely because I have not wanted to invest in what the opposite looks like. So if I kind of can keep victory, and for me, it's not a game. So I believe, you're looking at victory as you're winning something. I'm not winning anything. This is horrendous.
No.
I am losing a massive aspect of my life. The people before me and the people that are currently there, and all I want to do is evoke change. I can't go back to being an officer. I probably can't even go back to being any state employer after this situation or in any state.
The government won't hire you. No, this is that. No,
so it's kind of there's no victory because it was never a game. And so for me, it's just kind of a process, and I don't actually give myself either way, because either way I'll be disappointed. Either way, and so you don't set yourself up for disappointment, otherwise you will lose control of the situation. And so I kind of keep myself level, and it's kind of just really methodical and keep going, but there is no end goal.
But you're basically fighting for a principle in a system that looks like it's long since given up on principles.
That is absolutely correct. And so therefore there is nothing there to fight for because it's already gone. And so therefore my philosophy is change. And whether or not that is the slightest bit of change for somebody else, then that they don't have to suffer what I've suffered through or everyone else suffered before me, then that will be the victory. If there has to be a definition of victory, is that one day, a girl or a boy that works in the Department of Justice says, hey, we've it's better now. They got rid of those, people in the corners. They got rid of the hierarchical control, and we are all doing the same job equally, and we have the right to contribute to our profession equally.
Yeah, and basically you brought back fairness. I mean, as a people, we shouldn't be scared of the courts. We should have the ability to take something to the court and even if we self-represent, it shouldn't be that hard to get through if you've got a good case.
Oh,
But
do you know what?
most
I would.
people are
Yeah.
daunted by it.
The problem is the barristers and lawyers, straight away they threaten costs against you because you don't have any costs. I can't threaten them for costs because it doesn't cost me anything to run my own case, and I can't claim any costs against them. So if you raise something,
you're kidding. So you get through all this, you can't claim any costs.
Correct. No.
But you'll get costs awarded against you.
Correct. Millions of dollars awarded against me, yes, but I don't have a lawyer, so I don't have a barrister, so there's no incentive for them to stop. There's nothing because there's no costs. I'm not. There's nothing because I'm not utilizing the taxpayer system to gain benefit out of this situation. I will do it the way it's supposed to be done.
You're amazing. Scotty was saying you're amazing, and you get a bit fatigued out of all the things. But when I was reading what you sent me, I was thinking, wow. And now here, you're amazing. You are. I hope you boys can see it because someone has to do it. Someone has to challenge it. You know.
To be honest with you, I'm just ordinary, Michael, and I guess all I am going to try and show people is that anybody.
You are not ordinary. The ordinary are out there lining up for the vaccination centres, waiting for them to reopen and do what they're told. No, you're not ordinary at all. You're actually quite extraordinarily rare. You remind me of William Bay, except maybe you're not as theatrical as my great mate. But you're not rare. Miley Trin is another one. You know, I don't even know Dr. Miley Trin, but I think they thought she was going to be a pushover. She's still pushing ahead. She's got it in it, and she's a great fighter.
I actually speak to her privately, and we talk about it.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you too.
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for self-representing, and we've talked a few times actually. And this is where
can I just ask? Sorry, there's no retired judges, retired lawyers, or barristers that have come forward and said, "Look, I'm going to help you. I'll be in the background, but I'll help you." No one's come along like that, because I know the boys had people in the background helping.
So I have a group of self-representing litigants that are helping me, and some of them are lawyers.
Good.
And we help. Like I help them. They help me. We bounce off each other, and they are in the federal court or in other courts. Some of them are lawyers that are representing themselves. But
I agree, Colleen. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have a kind of, from May being quite vocal about the fair access to justice for self-representing litigants, we have built a nice little posse of them as well. Yeah.
Do you know what you're also doing just by this interview tonight? You're holding up a mirror to Australia, and most of us would look in the mirror and go, "We don't want it. We don't like this reflection. We don't want this."
Oh, I think
here's a woman who's done nothing wrong, and she's just after some justice. Come on, this is. I mean, what are you wanting to do? You wanting it to kill herself? Or are you going to do it? Are you going to go a step further? What's the end game here from their side if the intimidation doesn't work? You're going to stop there, or are they going to try go further? I mean, it's insane. It's insane when it could be hard.
I mean, they would. God, if anything happened to me, they would be popping champagne bottles. I can guarantee that. It would be.
I have no doubt.
Such a celebration. I think what the biggest picture is with people in the public and even watching this is that they don't have no idea what they're paying for.
Yeah, I'm just going to go here. Yeah, Bronwyn is reminding me of a little break in Miranda. Absolutely. I wouldn't say little. I sincerely hope that she does not meet the same fate. Yeah, but fully expect to shout, shoot straight, you bastards, at the end. Yeah, I'm you. I have a saying that we're not girt by sea, we're girt by cowards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, the future, the quality of our grandchildren's liberty depends on the decisions we make here today. And so many are making just quiet, they're not participating, they don't care. And so I think, too, you're fighting for a better country to leave. We can't leave this broken, corrupt cesspit where things just don't make sense on a fair, equitable stage. You know, this is it, you know.
Without a doubt, yeah. And unfortunately, my platform is a federal court, which is a national court. And if that is the platform that they want to perform at, then I will do what I can to expose that. Like everyone says, oh, they won't take this to trial because they won't want you to talk about sex props and pocket pussies.
That's right.
And they won't want you to tell the truth about, because they've already admitted to it. You got to remember, they've admitted to most of it, if not all of it already. So the fact that, so it's all in admissions. And one of the offenders have just filed a defense admitting as well. And I put letters of apology coming out everywhere that, of officers that did the wrong thing and that wanted to write an apology. So it's not that it's disputable at all. They've already admitted. So it's kind of a situation where...
So this is why they're trying to scare you. They're trying to use the process to get someone who's right and they know they're wrong, and they're trying everything they can through bullying tactics, intimidation, all this other stuff, drawing out the process, screwing around with your documents, everything they can to get you to quit. They want to break you.
Without a doubt, they want to break you. Like, there's no doubt about that. And they'll use every tactic in the world to do that, whether or not that's even break your soul and break your heart. Like, I think calling someone unintelligent and stupid because, potentially I didn't file the document correct, I didn't say the right thing, whatever it could be. It's usually just a technical argument. It really eats at your self-worth as a person. You go, fuck, am I that stupid? Like, I don't want to be stupid. I want to learn this. And so therefore it builds this perpetuation of then, fuck, I've got to study for like 72 hours straight to try and understand this because I don't want to be called unintelligent by a barrister of the state who's getting paid by the taxpayer. And I don't think the people would actually want anybody to actually be put through that if they knew what was going on. And that was the huge encouragement to, come to court. You have to watch what's going on. And this is why we have laws that are broken. This is why we have politics that is broken. This is why we have a cost of living crisis, because it all starts in these courts. It all starts with these decisions, and, legislation starts in these courts. And it's still people start standing up and say, no, that legislation shouldn't have been created by that barrister or lawyer or made that decision by that judge. We are overrun by a judiciary that is absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Just go, what can I do? It's my job. What can I do? They're in there. But
Correct.
You guys have to, if anyone who's on the opposite, if you're watching this is the country you want to leave to your children. This is how you want it to be. You're comfortable with this. You're comfortable in enabling this to continue and not actually thinking, this is why he became a lawyer, just to be corrupt to make money, or just, it's incredible.
I get that they want to make ends meet, and I'm sure when they go to uni and study law, it's got nothing like this in it. Like the same as a prison officer, you go there and you commit to learning how to communicate and how to de-escalate. You don't go in there learning how to punch people up and fight with people because that's the way it is. You don't find that out till you get there. And I'm sure there's a lot of professions like that, especially in the legal profession, and where you're standing in front of a judge that actually wants to see the performance. He is frothing over his performance that he gets to see. And he doesn't have to.
That's interesting. If a barrister calls you stupid or unintelligent, it's a significant breach of professional conduct. If that is, do you have anywhere to approach, like
that's a really good comment, because I have approached the legal professional board, and guess who they're run by? They're run by lawyers and barristers.
Yeah, but did they take it seriously, or they just dismiss it? Surely
we've had so we've had two. They're having bad days. So two of the barristers have been they.
Oh, that's it. They're having a bad day.
They had a day.
They're having a bad day on their $900 or $1,000 or $2,000 a day wage.
Yeah, being paid for by the state. They had a bad day, and the state solicitor even said, like, the barristers are emotionally dysregulated. Having a barrister fall asleep in court in front of a federal judge and snoring and pulling. Michael Genovis from 9 News was there, and we had the barrister for 7 West Media there. And they, madly writing notes about this barrister sleeping in front of a judge and the judge doing nothing about it. And they didn't report on it, though. Why? Why didn't they report on it? Because, that's, for me, that's relevant. You've got complete disrespect and a complete disconnect about the reality of what court is really like and what the reality of court is like. It's so contradictory.
Well, the reason they wouldn't cover it, the MSN, is I think the MSN is all about theatre, working with the government to keep
Yeah.
people happy in their little construct. There it is. Everything's safe, and
I
that's
mean,
what
look
they're
at,
all about.
yeah.
I don't see them being about the news much anymore unless they're allowed to go on about it.
Well,
It's such an
yeah.
incredible time.
I mean,
Yeah.
this topic about the media is huge because most of the time I don't even make comment to the media, and they just make something up or use my photo that they've had from years.
Seriously, they
Absolutely.
make something up that you said and you didn't actually say it.
Well, one of them specifically from the West Australian, I won't name her again. I've named her before, but she rang me one day. She was like, I've got like 15 minutes to write this story about you. Do you have a comment? And I said, no, I don't have a comment, actually. Like, I don't at all. And I said, but I'm sure you'll just write whatever you want anyway. And she said, I sure will. And she then wrote that I said a comment, and I didn't. So, and same,
Did you say what the comment was?
Oh, I don't remember now. There's been so many where I'm like, that is just bullshit. So the media in some ways were beneficial in the case when they were starting to come to court and they were reporting on the problems, but they weren't reporting on the entire story and the depths of what was actually going on behind the scenes. So it was kind of like so selective, and I was blown away of how they were framing certain aspects of a story for what they thought clickbait they could get and you'd go, no, why didn't you tell this part? The actual, the part that is terribly corrupt, or the part that is, prima facie, collusion or misfeasance in public office. Why aren't you reporting on this? And they just don't. So it's kind of, you realize by the end of this that there is no one. There is no one at all.
When I was in Canberra with the boys' trial, the police commissioner at the time when we were in Epic, after Epic finished, he got in front of the Parliament and said on the record that there was between 6,000 and 10,000 people in the march to this.
Yeah.
And we had all the footage to show that was bollocks.
Yeah.
But in the court, well, the ABC reporters were there. You listening, ABC? The ABC reporters were there. All the police witnesses came up and said there was hundreds of thousands upon thousands. One of them even said 1 million, right?
Wow.
I went up to the ABC reporter because I wanted to bring a laptop and type. No, you're not allowed. The judge wasn't allowed, but they could. And so I went up and I said, about the police commissioner said there was 6,000 to 10,000, and these guys have said there was millions. And these ones were just below the police commissioner. So there was no one between them and the police commissioner. So somehow they said to him, there's about 1 million people there. And he said, what, 6,000 to 10,000? Just maybe a bad hearing, I don't know. But the thing is, I said, why shouldn't that be a case? Because the police commissioner of the ACT has lied or disinformation under oath, and they can prove it from their footage. Shouldn't that be a story? And they just weren't interested. It's like, and they just walk. They just don't. So they protect.
It's crazy. They do,
The
and I mean,
the job MSN isn't. So the MSN is supposed to hold the government to account. They're not doing their job unless now and again they do. There's the judges don't seem to be doing their job, and it has to end. We can't continue like this because this doesn't lead to anywhere good. This just leads us further and further down into a darkness that we don't want to live in.
Correct.
So
I completely
really
agree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Prison officers are not the only profession subject to hazing as part of their training. Okay. Yeah. And the other thing too, I guess you're seen as a whistleblower. And in this country, even though they have whistleblower protections, they're bullshit as well.
They are. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've spoken to quite a few whistleblowers that haven't been protected at all, actually. It's gone traversely the other way. I mean, you look at this situation. So I've engaged in a few podcasts on Edge Radio with Robin from Courage is the Cure. So what happens once I do one of these, the state barristers and lawyers will download this and they will transcript every word I say and they'll file it in an affidavit to the judge. And what they're wanting...
Well, it's not their fault because we have heard that a lot of barristers have very small penises. That's spelled Penis. And because of that, they're very bitter with the world. and they have to
Right.
get their own back by the world by wearing things and wearing wigs and coming across as very important, but they're just hiding the fact that they have very small penises. It's just a fact of nature.
Right.
I mean, you could, if you're not, you could expose it in the court and prove me wrong. I'd be happy to be there, take a photo. But apart from that, that's just a fact of life. I'm really sorry, you guys. I understand why you have to fight back the way you do to hide this disability. But what can you do?
I mean, you've got to find the humor in it.
Put that in your transcript.
They will, trust me, they will, and they'll highlight that I giggled at that, and I thought that was funny. So it all comes back to me at the end of the day. Is that if I say something,
you can tell me off now. That's a terrible thing to say, Mark.
I did it.
Yeah,
I did
APRA
it.
does that every time I interview a doctor. APRA transcribes everything, and everything we say they go in. So we do it against APRA.
It's crazy, and it's funny. Like I did when everyone came to court for the recusal. I don't know if Robin spoke to you, but we had Edge Radio. And I had a good posse at the back there, and the state barrister turned around and actually commented, like, how dare they be in the back of this hearing? Like, Bron's brought her media with her. And, the fact that the judge said nothing, that the barrister was turning and addressing the public chamber, it just goes to show, like, they just want to intimidate people at the back as well. So the people at the back are going, oh, fuck, are we doing something wrong? And no, they were just there in the public chamber, and that they were there to support me on the day because I was shitting myself. And recusing a federal court judge is, litigation suicide. But yeah, they were there to support me, not to cause any issues. And they were very, very, everyone was really polite. And yeah, they still got criticized by the state. And the state are paying that woman hundreds of thousands of dollars to represent them. And she's okay to turn to the public and bully them. It's just disgusting.
Amazing. I want to read this out from Cal. Bronwyn, you have everything they don't: courage, integrity, and God on your side. Thank you for standing up for yourself and everyone else who thinks they can't make a difference. It's
thanks, Cal.
it's hard that it's a hard baton to hold up, but the other thing too, it's like you're writing about it. This is, I mean, you're not going to make it, but this really is a movie. It's like Brockovich, you know what I mean? Have you thought of doing law? Have you actually thought of studying law?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I have to study a part of it to actually just even conduct my case, because
that's what I mean. You're doing the apprenticeship.
Yeah, so you are it's you have to write affidavits at a barrister level and present submissions and understand case precedent, and because I don't want to,
like, hear what you said then, barrister level. So you'd expect that to be great, but in Melissa McCann, they were spending a fortune on their barrister, and the application he put in was thrown out as being ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were paying for. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know either. I don't know what, but the thing is though, like it's an endless bucket of money for the state. They don't care how much litigation costs or what it's costing the taxpayer, because the taxpayer don't have a say in it. I'm sure taxpayers
they do now, because the taxpayers are going hungry. The taxpayers can't afford to heat their houses. The taxpayers are choosing between paying the rent and buying food. Most people, I would say, a lot of people out here now are not buying fillet steak. They can't afford it. They're looking through and figuring out how they're going to survive. And so the government at some point should really go, we just can't keep doing this with taxpayer money. They probably won't, but this is what they should be doing, because the people are going to get fed up of it, because things are getting harder.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the judges in the federal court; they've all got Qantas Club memberships that they never had to pay for. Yeah. And it's extraordinary, where you think, hang on a minute, how do you get a Qantas Club membership, and how's that come out in a budget after all these years that have been hidden for so long?
I was taken into the Parliament here. Cal and I were I won't say by who, but it was an independent senator got us in there, and we went into the dining room, and my God, there's had waiters there, fine dining, all the food. I mean, the food was incredible, like one of the best restaurants in town. Here you are, and wine and everything. And I thought, no wonder they're out of touch with the public.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they just come in here get this incredible meal, don't pay for it, get treated like kings as everyone's flustered, all these waiters are flustering around them. No wonder they have no idea how someone in Rockingham living in their car feels.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, the other thing is though, they need to do lived experience. They need to go into these places and
Wouldn't
live
that
it hard.
be good? Wouldn't that be
great?
good?
I'd love to see that.
Barristers and judges living in a car on the beach, getting moved on by the cops,
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Being scared.
Yeah. Oh, look, is there anything else you'd like to talk about tonight before we wrap it up?
I just wanted to thank you, really. I do watch a lot of your podcasts.
You don't have to thank me. We're in awe of you.
Oh, no, don't be.
I know we are. And everyone here is. Everyone. We are in awe of you. What I would like to do, though, is Cafe Locked Out is yours. If you need to come back, to help in any way, or you've got an update or anything, we're happy to follow you whenever. Absolutely.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people here behind you, and this would be good, a groundswell, and this is what it should be. So absolutely, And
I'm so grateful for the support. Like I kind of feel a little bit so humbled by it because, I am just a country girl that's just flapping around here in Donnybrook and, doing my best. But I think, for me, it's the bigger picture of the bigger picture. So I may just be before the federal court for sexual harassment, but far out there is so much more behind it, and there's so much more that's going to be exposed going through it. And what originally happened in the workplace is a tiny little aspect. What is going to happen next, I believe, maybe something that can change the system. And we'll see. I'll keep chipping away and try my best, and just keep showing up. And that a part of it is these are people around you, and knowing that there's somewhere there is someone that is in the same situation that is struggling or considering taking their lives. And if they can see someone that's gone, I feel the same, but if we just keep going, we can get there. I guess that's my purpose. And I'm hoping that that'll evoke something. And I'm noisy in Parliament, and I'm noisy to politicians. And I actually, in the book, every part politician I've been to actually over the last many years, I was like, no, that's okay. If you can't help me, then I'm just going to put you in the book. And there is actually a subject. There is a chapter in the book. I've remained quite soft in the book, but there will be more. There will be more books.
Can you send us, if we haven't done it, can you send us all the links to the book, and I will make sure it goes in all the show notes too. So if you want to read these books or anything, we'll find them through here. So get them in. We can talk about this afterwards.
I think
this is going to spread, so we should get it done quickly. Get it done by tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. So I wrote the book purely, it's not just my story. So it's a memoir for everybody. So a lot of stories have come through that book. And I've been the one to be the voice. So it's, it exposes a lot, and there'll be another one being made. So I'm in the process of writing the next one because we've got lots of other people that want to tell their stories as well. And again, we'll put it through a memoir. And we'll play with the edge of fiction, as in we have to keep people's names anonymous. And I'm the storyteller, but they're not all my stories. They are real stories from affected people. So that's again,
I was just capturing other people's stories.
Correct. Yeah. So it's kind of a good way to do it. And it's been such a fantastic therapy process, getting words nutting around in your head and just getting it out.
I ask you one question to finish. One question to finish. Before you even applied for the prisons, when you're thinking, maybe should I go for that job, to who you are now, how have you changed as a person, better or worse?
Oh, without a doubt, I have changed for the better, I would have to say. I think what I've learned as a person, to stand up for boundaries, to speak out when I would normally be silent. There's a lot of things that go through my head on a normal day, and being a reserved person or an introvert, you sit with that and you don't want to upset people and you don't want to create conflict. And I think what I've learned is that boundaries is a big one, that's, what I should and shouldn't tolerate as someone that probably is rather self-sacrificing, which comes naturally as being a mum probably of lots of kids, as you put yourself
Especially
last.
6 boys.
And so I have learned how to be, and also I've learned how to manage mental health, so like to get through and know that there's another day the next day. And it's okay to cry. It is okay to have a day in bed and doom scroll and listen to really sad music and have a good cry. I think learning how to manage those things that I would love to share with people that are also in a dire situation that don't know the tools that just get through you for the few hours. So yeah, I feel like I am probably not a better person, but so much I'm a bit fuller than I was before.
Well, you certainly, when you get to the other side, you'll certainly have a novel that the angels will want to read. It'll be a very interesting book. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
okay,
that's
I wish you
great.
the best, but that's true. I'm very interested in what happens, and I think the people are here as well. So keep us informed. If you want to come back for another chat, let's book it in. No problem at all. Might even help with the groundswell of people behind you, and that can sort of change things, because if the politicians feel that a good scandal could come of this, they'll probably want it to go away,
Yeah, well,
so,
yeah, that's right. Maybe
we can only try.
We can. Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you so much,
worries.
Michael and Kel. I really appreciate it.
No problem. We'll be heading down south in the next few weeks. I think we want to get down to Albany or a caravan park there where they've just evicted all these people. So the stories we want to tell with just the petrol and everything like that. But so we'll come through Donnybrook. That's where Barry Green lives.
Correct, he does, and we've got lots of apples. So come down and get a bag of apples. It's an apple town,
sure.
so that's what we do.
And be good to do it in person, like almost a documentary style. So that could even go further. You know what I mean?
Sounds great.
But this was fantastic interview. I admire your courage so much, and it's really refreshing. And I think you're fighting for something more than just one case. I think you're fighting for all of us because we want to live in a better Australia than this.
Absolutely,
we really
I
do.
agree. Yeah, I agree.
And you're basically saying, I'm not walking past this, because every time you walk past something unacceptable, that becomes acceptable, and you've said, no, this is as far as I'm going.
And that's why society is the way it is that too many people have walked past too many things for too long. So it's time
100%.
to not walk past.
100%. The line in the sand. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, guys, we're going out with the lucky country. Stay in the studio. We'll play this and we'll have a chat. Okay.
Thanks,
see everybody. George Kazig is on tomorrow, and another interview has just gone up tonight. I'll be putting it up again. This is Damien Ogborn, and he is if I get this, he's a professor. He's a environmental scientist. He doesn't believe in man-made climate change. He used to be on the board of the Commonwealth Board of Biosecurity, and he claims that the CSIRO not only was working with Wuhan, but told Wuhan, where the COVID virus came from, that their security was not tight enough, and so they had a belief that things could escape. Apparently, extraordinary interview, and he just saw the bus and said, "I want to talk." So he's gone up tonight too. Thanks to Richie and Max Freedom. So there's a lot of stuff happening.
Cool. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no worries. This is a lucky country, and this is getting us back to where we want to be. Good night, everybody. See you Sunday. I've got a farmer coming on Sunday with Paul.
When I met Jesus Christ, he was almost 10 years old, and he was helping his mother push a trolley full of all they owned. And because they couldn't find an inn they could get in, they were heading to the city and leaving Bethlehem. Couldn't you perform a miracle? I'm out of them, he said. I tried turning nothing into warmth, but it just made my mother cry. It just made my mother cry. Mary Magdalene has become a man, and tonight he's old, and we all owe so much money, but to whom we're not quite sure. So hey,